Welcome back for part 2 of my look at some of the more obscure sequels to popular NES games. I realize how many examples there are of these forgotten follow-ups, so I thought it'd be fun to go through a bunch all at once. Since this channel is about highlighting more obscure titles in the NES library, here's a few sequels I want to throw out there that everyone should be familiar with, and as such I won't spend any time discussing in this video series. This is a part 2 of, I don't really know how many yet, but if you're so inclined, there's a link to part 1 in the description, so check that out. In this edition, I'll be going over more sequels that would maybe be classified as more unloved than obscure, but for sure compared to their source material, these are the runts of the litter. Let's start with a more well-known title in Double Dragon 3, The Sacred Stones. When most people think Double Dragon, they're probably thinking of the original. I remember playing it a few times as a kid, but it wasn't until years later that I learned it was only one player. I could have sworn it was two-player co-op. It's fucking Double Dragon. The second game, Double Dragon II: The Revenge, is a souped-up version of the original with co-op gameplay, more moves, and more elaborate stages. It does have this weird attack system where you can only kick in the opposite direction you're facing, but otherwise it's superior to its predecessor in every way. Double Dragon 3 returns the controls to the first game, but adds in this flipping throw move that's as cool looking as it is hard to pull off. The visuals are a little off compared to number 2, kind of like they're from a Bayou Billy sequel or something. Also, Double Dragon 3 is extremely hard. Extremely hard. The enemy AI is for sure ratcheted up a level, and you only have one life, no continues. That, and I'm a bit of a hater on beat-em-ups where one move is superior to all others, like the leaping swing in Turtles 2 the arcade. Here it's the jumping spin kick, which is awesome when it works, but a real soul crusher when it doesn't. If you're hardcore and enjoy an extreme challenge, 3 is the one to choose. But if you're looking to have some classic Double Dragon fun with your buddies, go with the second game. Or better yet, Battletoads Double Dragon: The Ultimate Team. But more on that later. The action platformer classic Ninja Gaiden got 2 sequels for the NES. Ninja Gaiden 2, The Dark Sword of Chaos, came out in 1990 and featured almost exactly the same gameplay as the first title, but with a few upgrades. You can climb up walls now, there's lots of neat background effects, and there's a slew of new weapons to pick up, most notably the ninja clones. They don't seem that useful to me, but it is pretty cool to have 2 identical buddies running behind you. Also, there's more of the excellent story from the original, complete with the rad cutscenes. Ninja Gaiden 3, The Ancient Ship of Doom, came out a year later in 1991, and features the same gameplay as the first 2 games, but with a few extra tweaks. Basically, we're talking about the difference between the Mega Man games here. There's a new story, new levels, and new boss fights, but you're basically playing the same game on a different cartridge. Ninja Gaiden 3 adds in some updated graphics, sword upgrades, and the ability to jump once you've clung onto a wall. It sounds insignificant, but if you played 1 and 2, you know how easy it is to get stuck on a wall with nowhere to go, because you can't climb, and you can only jump back the opposite direction, to your death. All 3 games are the epitome of NES hard, and while the first couple stages always lull you into a false sense of security, after that, it's studying for the LSAT's commitment levels to beat the Gaidens. Oh, one more thing. They added in a sound effect where Ryu grunts every time he attacks. Get used to that sound, you'll be hearing it a lot. Adventures of Lolo III is exactly like 1 and 2, except that in this game there's a world map where you can interact with other characters and choose which level you want to play first. It's not really necessary since you'll have to play them all anyway, but it looks cool, and it at least helps Lolo III stand out from its predecessors. Other than that, it's clever puzzle gaming at its finest. The graphics, enemies, and general gameplay mechanics are identical to the other Lolos, but if you've made it through 1 and 2 and enjoy them, give Adventures of Lolo 3 a try. Wizards and Warriors got 2 sequels. The awkward to alphabetically organize Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors 2, featuring the ridiculous Fabio art, and the intense looking and sounding Wizards and Warriors 3, Kuros, Visions of Power. These games all have a lot of charm, and there's something so fun about leaping around the levels, looking for hidden items or treasure, navigating these massive stages while yielding probably the least useful sword ever made. Iron Sword adds these elemental themed stages with animal guardians you need to help in order to fight the boss of each section. It's a little clunky and frustrating, but you kind of get used to it. At least that's what my 8-year-old self believed. The final game, Wizards and Warriors 3, I don't really know. You start out in this unfortunately planned out town where all the houses are stacked on top of each other. There's these people walking around that can't hurt you, but can you talk to them? No. Can you push them off buildings with no remorse? Yes. So you wander around and go in some buildings without finding much until you locate the store owner dude. Now you can buy keys and open some of these locked doors. And here's where the game loses me. There's so many doors to unlock, and you have to scrounge more money every time you open one just in order to buy more keys to open more doors. However, none of these interiors seem to yield much other than a few coins. Why couldn't there just be like 2 doors that were locked and the rest be optional? Somehow I eventually found 2 boss fights, one devil dude I beat pretty easily, and this buff lounging dude who can't be hurt. Also, there are various guilds you can join and learn abilities by finding statues. If this seems like a lot, it kinda is, especially for the very beginning of the game. It seems like Wizards and Warriors 3 is going for a more complex, Faxanadu-esque version of the original. I'm sure this pays off at some point, but I'm 20 minutes in and I'm still buying keys here. Maybe I'll come back to this another time and give it a longer run through. Woof. Now we're jumping into the deep end. The Simpsons, my beloved Simpsons, got 3 NES games and wow. Most people played 1991's Bart vs. Space Mutants, a half-platformer, half-adventure game about spray painting purple things and using the glasses from They Live to see aliens. That same year, Acclaim released another whopper of a game with Bart vs. the World. This is easily one of the worst NES games out there. It's just a couple short mini games, including trivia, one of those fucking slide puzzles, the card match game from Mario 3, a terrible platform level, and a ridiculously easy skateboarding stage. In 1992, the final nail in the coffin was released for the Nintendo, Bartman meets Radioactive Man. I was, and still am, a huge Simpsons fan, so I rented all these games from Blockbuster back in the day, including Bartman, and surprise, surprise, I still can't make it past the first level. The controls are stiff, the graphics look like shit, the colors are as bland as they come, enemies appear out of nowhere, you mysteriously fall through platforms, and worst of all, the level goes on and on and on. I think if you own this game as a kid, you probably tell me that it's not that hard, but that definitely means that you had nothing better to do than to play this over and over and over, until you memorize every section, every drop, every enemy appearance. I'm not saying I really have something better to do right now than repeatedly playing Bartman vs. Radioactive Man, but I'm gonna lie and say I do, just so I don't have to endure this any longer. All these games are terrible. That's really all you need to know. Moving on. Okay, enough of the trilogies for now. Piggybacking on the success of Track and Field 2 ups the ante with more events, more variety, and much improved graphics. I mean, damn. Only 2 years separates these 2 games, and they look like they came out on totally different systems. The original is classic, simple, charming, and super fun depending on your button mashing ability. Other than archery or skeet shooting, the events require you to rapidly press one button repeatedly to build speed, and another to jump, throw, or vault. I'm personally a bit of a slow draw with the button mashing style, so I tend to get trounced at Track and Field. The sequel goes for a more well-rounded approach to the Olympic sampler. There's still furious button pressing events like the hurdles or the hammer throw, but there's also the 1v1 fighting of taekwondo and fencing, the vastly different shooting games, and the trick-based high dive and horizontal bar. Honestly, this is a pretty excellent game, with great graphics, rad music, and challenging but fair gameplay. Of all the sports titles on the NES that utilize minigames or like a multiple event structure, this may be the best. Finally, let's talk about an obscure game that doesn't sound that obscure, WWF King of the Ring. The first 3 WWF games are the same title, with added words for each sequel. 1989's WWF WrestleMania, 1990's WWF WrestleMania Challenge, and 1992's WWF WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge. There's just no way you get any of those confused, right? They're fairly identical, with a slight change in graphics and character selection. Are they any good? I never really played these titles growing up, but I bet if you did, you've probably got some nostalgia for at least one of them. As someone playing them 20 years later, they just seem pretty boring and repetitive. The final game in the series, WWF King of the Ring, was a late bloomer, arriving to the NES in 1993. This was developed by East Ridge Technology, and this was their only NES game. Given that info and the quality of the 3 WrestleMania titles, I'm surprised to say that King of the Ring is actually pretty good. I mean, not really, but compared to those games, it's a masterpiece. There's another large cast of characters to choose from, but now they have different stat attributes that help to add a little more information than just, oh yeah, gotta pick Macho Man. Also, a little theme plays whenever you hover over them. It's nothing special, but it's a nice touch. The gameplay is more the same, with a few improvements like being able to climb the turnbuckle, but very much, it's an 8-bit wrestling game, with all the simplicity and subtle charm that comes with it. The titular King of the Ring is just a tournament mode you can select, and I'm not sure how this differs from just a regular tournament. Seems like it'd be way more fun to do the cage match or a story mode or something, but all around, it's kind of fun, with way more responsive controls than its predecessors, and a much more balanced difficulty setting. And that's about it for now. There's still a ton of even more obscure sequels to cover, but I'll have to save those for another time. I'd love to just knock all these out at once, but for sure, these kind of videos take way longer than the straightforward single game reviews. So rather than making one 30-minute video that takes me a month to finish, please bear with me, and I'll be back soon with part 3. Thanks for watching.